Get ready to strap in. It's going to be a heck of a ride. It's like drinking from a fire hose. Never a dull moment, but yes, you'll hear the stories you won't hear anywhere else, and we appreciate you being here with us for them today. I'm Justin Barclay. Yeah, today my good friend, a guest joining us who died. You don't get to say that every day. He didn't stay dead. We'll tell you the story about that. It is quite a story. He's an explorer who's been all over, climbed Mount Everest, searched for Noah's Ark, and he continues to move forward on his mission to share the gospel and make sure people get to hear it and get invited to the greatest story of all time. His story is quite incredible as well. That story about how he died. And like I said, he didn't stay dead. He's here with us today. So welcome in for that conversation, my good friend, Kevin DeVries from Grace Explorations. Kevin, good morning. I can't think about this because I just think of you as Kevin, but there is this massive story that you and I kind of went through together at one point that I think people would be just astonished by. In fact, I was telling a friend about this the other day, but it's all part of what God's doing in your life, and it's really incredible.
Yeah. You were there. You kind of walked me through that whole thing, and we've journeyed many miles together. So I like to look at my near-death experience as a highly successful failure. Everything went really wrong, and then everything went really right. But when you walk away from those experiences, and we're part of a growing club. There's a lot of people with near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, and it's kind of weird. It's not a survivor's guilt thing, but you're just thinking, especially like with a cardiac arrest, which is what I had, there's so few of us that survive that. I mean, maybe 3 to 6%, because it's all electrical. So if they can't put a defibrillator on you, you're gone. So they need to find you and find you quick. And that happened in my case. But you just kind of walk away from that feeling like, okay, there's a mission. Like I actually heard the voice say, your time is not here, is not up, and your mission is not complete. And then you just kind of try to figure, okay, well, what was so important that I had to be brought back, right? You line 100 people up and 3 of us get saved. And so it's almost like the Saving Private Ryan, the character that Matt Damon plays when the other character, is basically telling him, make it worth it, and so he spends his whole life, trying to, I don't know, somehow make his life matter. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just trying to do big stuff and make sure that for whatever reason God brought me back to life, that it's worth it.
Yeah. I know it is. And I know that we're going to talk about something else altogether here, different. But what was that like? Because I was trying to explain this to a friend of mine the other day. This guy was kind of in a bad place, and we were talking about faith. And, he said, I'm not sure what happens when I die. And I said, well, I kind of know. I have a friend who knows a little something about that. In fact, I was telling him a little bit about your story, but just walk this through for some of the folks that may not be familiar. You're a guy who can't sit still. So Kevin's out on a run one day. He's a runner. He's a jogger. He's a biker. He's a mountain climber. You name it, he's done it. He's out on a run one day, and this is a pretty simple run. And you got a heart attack right in the middle of it, and you actually die. How long were you out?
Well, they figured it was up to 15 minutes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of poetic parallels to it because I wasn't feeling well, and so I walked through Cascade Cemetery right there off of Cascade Road, close to Pine Ridge Elementary School, and saw a person dressed all in white. This is when I'm fully conscious. This is before the cardiac arrest. And I thought, well, that's unusual. I wouldn't be digging around in a grave, with a white hazmat suit on, right? And I just kind of tucked it away, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. But it felt, I don't know, something just felt a little different. I can't say that it was angelic at that point, but my spidey sense was picking up that maybe something bigger was happening. So I memorized a couple of the gravestones, which was good because then it proved that I wasn't hallucinating, when I was able to record it 48 hours later. A friend had the foresight to do that. He's like, man, you got to get this story on tape like now because it's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. So I get out of the graveyard, I go down to Cascade Road, and the next thing I remember is seeing apparently my dead body laying off the trail just at the entrance to Pine Ridge Elementary School on Cascade Road. And now I'm soaring up and over the school up and over the cemetery, and then I get placed back in the cemetery. But this time, this person, this masculine form that's all dressed in white, is not, his back is not to me. He's now facing me. And there's so much light that is coming out of this person that it feels like, the way I say it, it just feels like light that darkness has never touched, right? Because darkness is just, it's an absence of something. It's not a thing. It's just the absence of light. And it's like the original light, the light of creation, right? Where it all came out of this person. And it's not hurtful. It's not like, oh my gosh, I got to shield my eyes. It was more of just, I know you, like I know all of you. I'll know you more than you'll ever know you. But at the same time, it felt like there was all this love coming out of this person. And it felt like love that fear had never felt, which is what perfect love is. It just drives out that fear. And so I felt, um, illuminated. I felt like I was known, like I've never known myself and never will know myself as well. And yet I felt this tremendous amount of love pouring into this person. And then I felt that not only was there light and love, but there was just life that was coming out of this person that death cannot defeat. And by his own resurrection, I believe it was the risen Christ. And there's a lot of reasons for that that we don't have time to totally dive into. But I believe that I met the risen Christ, and that this person cannot be defeated, and that his death and resurrection is the template that we all get to follow. So if that's true, and I believe it is, and I believe that the resurrection is true, um, get guys like Chuck Colson, who headed up Prison Fellowship. He's like, there was like a dozen of us that couldn't keep our story straight for a day or two after Watergate. He's like, there's just no reason to believe that these guys, these original 12 disciples, could have kept a lie straight for the rest of their life and then died for that lie. It just doesn't make any logical sense. So obviously something happened where he reappeared in corporeal form, in tangible, a material form, but also had a sense about him and another dimensional aspect, another worldly element to him, where he could walk through walls at the same time. But he was also hungry. So at post-resurrection, he's eating fish, he's fellowshipping with people, he's appearing to people, he's walking with people, the road to Emmaus, and they don't even know who he is. So there's something interdimensional, interstellar, if you want to borrow, a great Christopher Nolan movie title. There's just something about the risen Christ that is the template for all of us. So that's where I place my hope in. And in that moment, there was no fear, there was no hiding. It wasn't a cosmic Santa Claus moment, like, oh my gosh, I need to prove how good I am. There was no scales being weighed. It was all hinged on the fact that he somehow knew me and I knew him. And in that matter, and in that moment, that's all that mattered. So the
Wow.
chronological clock is clicking, right? 15 minutes is going by, and there's a whole other story that's happening, a series of miracles that are there to set me in a rescue path. But I was in time outside time. It didn't matter. It could have been a million years. It could have been a millennia. But in that moment, this person, who I believe again was the risen Christ, because I felt, first of all, that there was a familial connection. I felt, man, there's some kind of brotherly adoptive thing going on here. And, when we think that through, yeah, we are all adopted, beloved sons and daughters of Almighty God. And so in that sense, we have a familial connection to the cosmic Christ, to the risen Christ, because we have the same Father. But then as time wore on, and again, it could have been an infinity, right? I didn't have any sense of time because I'm outside of time. I'm out of my skin suit. I'm in the spiritual realm. I'm tiptoeing on the threshold of eternity. I just felt in that moment that, yeah, he's more than my brother. And I felt like, okay, this is a captain that you go to war with.
Mhm.
And it had that feeling of, okay, this is who I go into battle with. This is the kind of man that when he says, follow me, there's some otherworldly frequency to that command that defies all logic and caused 12 guys to just drop everything and follow him. I mean, there had to have been some kind of resonance, some kind of power. I'm going to use the word frequency, vibration. I think the highest frequency that we know as humans is authenticity. There was something so authentic about his life and so pure and so true that when he told you to do something, you're just like, okay, yeah, why wouldn't I, right? It's like a Jedi thing, okay, yeah, of course, I'll give up everything, I'll die for you. So yeah, he had that kind of feeling like, okay, if this guy says something, I'm listening, and I'm going to do what he says. But then it arched into something even larger, something into a bigger meta narrative that as Americans, and of course, there's a lot of political energy behind this word, but this idea of a king, right? And I felt like in that moment, yeah, he's my brother, he's my captain, but this guy's my king. And as such, he deserves my highest allegiance. And all I can do is pledge him my life and
Yeah.
give him everything that I have. And when that happened, as that's transpiring, he just said to me, and again, it's poetic language because it was late September 2019. The leaves were just starting to fall, but as he turned, the words came to me like a leaf blowing in the wind. And he just simply said, "It's not your time." Dramatic pause. Your mission is not complete. And then the next thing I remember was waking up in an ambulance. Come to find out, I was 10 minutes behind schedule because I had killed 10 minutes walking around in the graveyard because I wasn't feeling all that well. The people that rescued me were all first responders. Two of the three were all 10 minutes behind schedule. They shouldn't have been on that road. They shouldn't have been there at that time. So God just was playing cosmic chess, and he was putting all these pieces together that he had probably thought of before I was even born, and knew that on September 21st, 2019, he'd have to put the right people in the right place, and they saved me. And then the paramedic, a couple months later, was at the celebration service, and there was like 3 or 4 of us that they had rescued. I was like, "Oh wow, these are the people you saved this month?" And he's like, "No, these are the people we saved this year. We almost always find you dead. There's only a couple minutes, that we can get to you, and you were probably pushing 15 minutes, which is really at the edge of brain activity." And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, and even saying the words now, it just gives me the God bumps. But he said, um, "It was obvious to me and my co-driver that when we picked you up, you were straddling 2 dimensions. Like
Wow.
you went somewhere, and I'm using my own words now. Those are his words. But you went somewhere, and there's like this glory dust on you. There's like something on you that you're like an astronaut for those 15 minutes, and so part of you is there, and then another part of you is here. But that just stuck with me. You're straddling 2 dimensions, and so a lot of us don't realize this, but we're all straddling 2 dimensions, right? We just don't know it. I mean,
Mhm.
there's the veil between eternity and time is thin, but it has to be there, because if we were to catch a full glimpse of that, I think it would just we wouldn't have the bandwidth to comprehend it. So the only way we can experience eternity is through the door of death, which is really that's all it is. It's a door, and it's to another dimension where you're not floating around as like a ghost or some apparition, but you are fully resurrected in bodily form like Christ was. And then, if you do all your eschatology on the book of Revelation, there's a lot of exciting things that can happen after that, where you never really die. you know, it's just that all we have is our skin suit right now. And so we're so obsessed with that and small stories and silly stuff that just occupies our life. So now I just told God at the beginning of this year, I'm like, okay, I'm 57. I've got some good energy still in the tank. We've done some projects since that event happened that reached a lot of people, mostly through film. But I just want to stop doing stuff that if you don't help me, it won't happen. I want to do stuff that's so big and so crazy that if you don't help me, and it's your idea, first of all, but if you don't help me, it's just not going to happen. And he took me up on that. So I'm involved in another project where if he doesn't help me, it's not going to happen.
Just so you know, Kevin, like I said, he has that wild experience, but he has also been involved in documentaries, searching for Noah's Ark. What was it called? Finding Noah? Is that the name of
Yeah.
the film?
Yeah.
Finding Noah.
We spent like 5 summers, and then they filmed the last summer. A film crew came from Hollywood, and the film went nationwide. It was in like 600 some odd theaters through Fathom Pictures, and nobody famous, just a lot of archaeologists and geoengineers and really, really smart people. That was my job. Just keep guys that can't get their shoes on, but they can read the Rosetta Stone, right? So just keep those guys alive. And Gary Sinise was our narrator, who's a fantastic guy, big name in that media Hollywood space, and he
Yeah.
was lent his voice to it. So it was a great. And then that kind of birthed kind of where you and I first intersected, because out of that film, I did a lot of speaking and was filling up rooms, and people were excited about that. Wow, you're looking for Noah's Ark, and what did you find or what didn't you find? And so it was a meta narrative. It was a big, big story. And all the three major religions share kind of the same story. They obviously have some nuance to it. And then all these legends that have popped up, there's hundreds of them, from Native Americans to Pacific Islanders. I mean, it's all over the world. So something must have happened to create a singular story before the age of global technology to create that origin point, the ontology of, the origin of that story. But That's where you and I started intersecting because then people were like, hey, why don't you start doing something here local in Grand Rapids and take the same DNA that fills the rooms when you go and speak at places and take that and let's start something here. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that, but I don't want to do it in a church because I want it to be a true outreach. So then you and I connected, and Founders Brewery was kind of the thing, and the Centennial Room upstairs, and people were driving 100 miles and like, wow, what is going on? I can't believe it. I was feeling God's presence while I was having a beer. Like, what? I never thought that would happen. Like, I feel the
So
Holy
what? So what
Spirit.
people need to know is this is something called base camp,
Yeah.
and it was a really cool place for men to come together and tell their stories. And
And you were a
they
big part of that. We were on every month, and we'd bring the speaker in, and you were like, hey, what's God up to at Founders Brewery? And so we just, I don't know, God created a safe place for guys to tell really dangerous stories, and come to
mm,
find out I wasn't the
mhm.
only one that really resonated with that. So it's all stuff you wouldn't hear on Sunday morning. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That has to be more PG, Christian radio friendly. We just told R-rated stories that were tough, really hard
Mhm.
stories to hear, but it opened up other men's hearts and they started cracking their chests open, and then hundreds of
Yeah.
stories were told, and some of them became books and documentaries of other types. But it gave guys the courage to be like, okay, wow, I just saw that guy get up and tell a really tough story. Maybe I could tell my story, and then in the telling of that story, maybe I'll
Mhm.
get my sword back. Maybe this thing that I've been carrying around, my story that's riddled with shame and is shattered, it doesn't make any sense to me because it's stuck in trauma or whatever. Maybe if I start telling it and start owning it, it'll no longer own me, and then I'll be able to offer my strength as a reforged sword back to the world. And so we helped guys own that. We created all kinds of video curriculum that lives on Grace Explorations. You can watch the movie. You can go through a whole 7-part video series that'll help you retell your story. And then we got to the point where, like, okay, we've got, base camp that blew up, and there was like 30 some odd base camps that were launched. 10,000 guys collectively have now come to those, and they continue to this day. And that's fantastic. And every base camp we launched, we reached a couple hundred men, and then we did some podcasts, and especially during the shutdown period. And then we did a bunch of video curriculum, and that reached tens of thousands of people. Where we're like, okay, again, my clock is ticking. I'm 57. I probably have a third of my life left if all goes well. What am I going to do in this last third? What am I going to do in this chapter? And so that's where films came into play. That was in part motivated by the Finding Noah, and then we were like, okay, let's go to Everest Base Camp and juxtapose the climb to Everest Base Camp and juxtapose that against the inward journey, which you might be able to see that on your screen. The greatest journey is within. And so
Yeah.
as we went up to base camp, which is 17,500 feet, and then climbed Kalapatar, which is in some of those shots there, all under the shadow of Amadablam, which is like the Matterhorn of the Himalayas. As we went up, we wanted the viewer to actually go in. So it's kind of a John Muir type of thing. You're not in the mountains are in you. Or he always would say, every time I went out, I actually found out I was going in. And so we just used the Himalayas as kind of a hike into the interior journey of the heart, and talked about that, and what it's like to journey with men, what it looks like to heal, and the idea that if you unless we journey together, we die alone, which is true on extreme expeditions. You have to be reliant on people. And so that kind of took off, and it won dozens of film awards. It's on a ton of platforms now. You can find it just about everywhere: YouTube, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Tubi, Vimeo, all that stuff, and then a bunch of other things. So we kind of caught a hold of that, and then we came into this next film, which is The Naked Soul, and it'll tell this near death story that I just told you. But the real star of the story of the film is going to be Shackleton, who was the greatest explorer that probably ever lived, and his story of survival, bringing 28 men, well, 27, 28, including himself, back home from literally death's door that went on for multiple years in Antarctica, is the greatest survival story in exploration history. And so we want to tell a part of his story that hasn't really been told. And that's where, after all this stuff has happened. His ship got crushed by the ice, so his men were thrust onto the ice floes for months at a time. They're drifting on this ice floe. They're trying to make do. They haven't touched terra firma land for months and months. And then finally, they get to this island called Elephant Island, which is this desolate island that nobody visits. So they're not in any shipping lanes. There's no whaling stations nearby. So if they stay there, they die. So then Shackleton gets the idea of, okay, let's take one of the lifeboats and built it up a little bit. It's 23 feet long. And he's like, the nearest station that we know where there's other humans is 800 miles away. It's the island of South Georgia. And that's maybe where we can spring a rescue for these men because they can't get out of there on three little lifeboats crossing the Southern Ocean, which, has killed 20,000 sailors, especially during the wooden ship era. So against all odds, 17 days later, they end up on Elephant Island after going through 40 to 60-foot waves in a modified lifeboat, 23 feet long. The Captain Worsley only gets like 3 or 4 sextant readings. So it's like if they miss the island, they're going to be thrust into the Atlantic and never be heard of again. They'll just find their skeletons on the boat. So but as he's crossing over this island, so they take 9 days and they're just trying to recuperate. 3 of the guys, or 6 of them now, 3 of the guys are so weak and are so invalid that they can't do anything other than just sit and wait for someone to rescue them. The boat's all battered up. So they have to cross over South George Island because of the storm that happened. They landed on the opposite side of the island, and now they're going into unknown territory. And for the next 36 hours, they cross, 25, 30 miles of glaciated terrain. And in the middle of that space, he had an encounter, which is, let me get this book here real quick. It's actually called The Third Man Factor. And it's a very popular book. It was a bestseller, but this guy chronicled all these episodes. And at the center of it, one of the most well-known stories was the story of Shackleton having a third man encounter on South Georgia Island, which is an old story. It goes back to the 3 Hebrew boys, in the fiery furnace in the book of Daniel. And they threw these Hebrew boys in there because they wouldn't bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar's image. And King Nebuchadnezzar's like, hey, I thought we threw 3 guys in there. I'm seeing this 4th person. Looks like a divine being, like a god. Like, who is this? And then they come out of the fire and they don't even smell like smoke. And so something intervened. Something broke the time-space continuum, broke the veil between time and eternity, and rescued those men. And since then, there have been other occurrences where people have felt such a strong visceral feeling during times of incredible duress and stress where, they're on the edge, they're on the ridge of life and death. And somehow this person like penetrates that time-space barrier and invades our space-time continuum and gives them such a feeling of relief that they actually feel like this persona is a person, the third man factor. And so as he's crossing over the island, if they fall asleep, they're dead. It was a 36-hour push. And they're severely dehydrated. All kinds of things are going on in their body. A lot of these people after the final rescue didn't live long lives because they had, gone through so much stress in such a compacted short period of time. But during that, he talked with his companions afterwards, Captain Worsley and Tom Crean, and they all had the same strange sensation that somebody else was with them. And so you see these stories keep popping up. The last guy that got out of the South Tower, almost everybody on his floor and above during 9/11 perished because that was the impact zone. He went through 2 or 3 floors of flames, right? So he went against his own intuition, got out of the building, was rescued, and people were like, hey, how did you know what to do? Because everybody else above you died. Like, you did the exact opposite. And he's like, well, I just followed this person. And they're like, that doesn't make sense because we found you alone. And then he's kind of like, that's funny you say that. And all these stories say kind of the same thing. The minute I heard other human voices, this person left. It was as if their job was done, guardian angel, or whatever label you want to put on it, divine being, disappeared the minute I was rescued. And so their job was completed. And so there's a lot of different angles in this. You can look at it from a spiritual angle. You can look at it from an ancestral language, right? A lot of indigenous people believe that these are their ancestors that are guiding them. It's an ancestral spirit. The people in the cognitive community, are like, wow, your brain is just, there's a lot of scientific language for this, but, essentially what's happening is under great duress, your mind is creating its own hallucination for its own comfort. right? And so you're just splitting your psyche, and this person becomes like your imaginary guide. And so you have the cerebral people, you have the ancestral people, you have the spiritual people. I'm in the spiritual camp. I'm a follower of Christ, and so I believe my context, the lens I'm looking through, that makes the most sense and has the most historical veracity is, yeah, I think there was guardian angels that came, and in some cases, could have been pre-incarnated Christ, and that happens throughout the Old Testament. There's a number of occasions where there's visitations in Old Testament times and stories. So we want to tell that story, and the main goal is to let people know you're not alone. So when you're like Corrie ten Boom, famous Dutch Holocaust survivor that was miraculously released from her concentration camp, but where her sister died days later. Like all the women in the camp were executed, along with probably my great aunt. We think that she was at the same camp, Ravensbrück. But she said that you don't know that God is all you need until God is all you have. So in my near death experience, I didn't do anything except almost die. Like God put together the rescue. He did it. I had nothing to do with it. There was no way I can control or manipulate, and neither could I control or manipulate the narrative that was happening during that 15-minute window. Not just the people that rescued me, but the conversations and the epiphanies that I was having is beyond my imagination. It was someone else took over the script. And the same thing happened with Shackleton. The same thing happened with the three Hebrew boys. There's times in your life where, if God doesn't come through, it may not have the ending that you're looking for. But in either case, whether it equals life in my case or death, which again, some days I'm kind of like, well, why didn't you take me, God? I'd rather be there with you. But he didn't open up himself. He didn't embrace me. If he had, he would have become the gateway. He would have become the gate to eternity, because we know from the biblical narrative that no one gets to God except through Christ. And so he didn't. He turned from me. And obviously it wasn't my time, but had he embraced me, it would have been, I would not be here. I would be in the other dimension. So we just want to give people comfort. You're not alone. There's a lot of big stuff, crazy stuff going on every day. There's crazy news going on, but at the center of that, there's an incredible calmness. And in the center of that calmness, we find Christ. And at the center of Christ, we find the heartbeat of God that is trying to echo into our dimension. You're not alone. I'm with you. Fear not. Right? Isn't that the big words? Always Jesus interacting with his disciples. Don't be afraid. Fear not. Don't be afraid. Fear not. God is a good God. He cares for us, even when we don't see it or it doesn't play out the way we think it should. He's always there.
It's incredible. I will tell you that I've been in those scenarios, not near death or death myself, but when we went through that with my daughter when
Yeah.
she was born at 27 weeks, we had this peace that you just can't explain any other way other than saying it's like the Bible says, a peace beyond understanding. It's just it's hard to convey, and yet that's all you want to do is share that with people, is share that promise. And that's what this film and now docuseries is set to do. Folks want to be a part of this. I know there's an opportunity to do that. Obviously, that's another scenario here that people have been very. We've seen, especially since the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination attempt, and unfortunately, that took his life. Turning Point, that organization has really exploded. But not only that, Bible sales people. There is a hunger in this country that is I think we're gonna continue to see, because people just want to see. They want to know what the truth is, and we're getting some of that right now. What's
Yeah.
your take on that?
Yeah, I just think to me it was a harbinger moment. It has every once in a while these big events happen, and you can sense that there's some kind of hinge. There's a door that's opening, and martyrdom is a powerful hinge. And Charlie represented a lot of the best of us, right? And so I think when his passing happened, to me it was very clear that there's a it's martyrdom, right? And as the church fathers always said, the church is advanced through the blood of the martyrs, or it becomes the seed. The church is grown and flourishes from the seed of the martyr, which is the blood of the martyr. And so there's something really powerful with that. And I think, not all of us are going to experience that. He had a big platform. He was a courageous young man. He did a lot in his young life, which to me indicates that whenever you see those bright, brilliant comets, those meteors that just flash through the sky and it's like their life is compressed, they're doing so much in one decade that most of us will never do in multiple lifetimes. You kind of have to keep your eye on that because it's like, there might be in our mind, right, a premature ending, but it may be that God knows when he's going to pass, which I believe is true of all of us. He knows our beginning and our end. The choices are ours in between. But I think God already knew that, okay, this is going to be the way that he exits. And we're going to make sure that in the time that he has, which was only, 31 years, which probably is about the same age as John the Baptist, right? We're going to compact his life, and make sure that whatever needs to be said is said in such a brilliant way and in such a bright way. But yeah, there was something happening. And then it was incredible to see all these politicians who were like preaching the gospel. I mean, I don't think there's any precedent for that, to see people who are in political office preach the gospel of Jesus Christ with great
I've never
clarity,
seen, yeah,
right?
I've never seen it
And
like
without a
that.
political agenda, just like, hey, and I thought this is something we need to pay attention to, because these are the things that open up awakenings, that open up doors. And I think we're on the crest of that. And it's probably what explains also the great rise of evil as well, because they're always together. Those angels and demons, they always dance on the same pinhead, if you will, right? In the same
It's
space. And so I
it's
think when
like
you see all the demonic, it's also true that you'll also see the angelic, you'll see the good, you know?
it's like evil knows that the days are numbered. The
Yeah.
time is ticking. And so it gets emboldened, but that also challenges us to become bolder with our faith, to become bolder with the good that we're doing. And as you mentioned, this is sometimes watching what Charlie was able to do, and I thought to myself, I've been thinking, gosh, what am I doing enough? What am I? Look at everything he accomplished. But
Yeah.
to pray maybe those God-sized prayers to use me in the ways that it becomes clear that you were a part of it. And that's certainly the case with this docuseries, The Naked Soul. So this is kind of like Angel has gotten, we've seen all of this culturally. Things are really starting to expand and make an impact. Charlie Kirk's of the world, et cetera. And Angel Studios, we've seen revival happening quite a bit. People are returning to church. I mean, I've seen attendance and heard just anecdotally that
Yeah.
attendance is up big at churches right now. But this is another way for you to get, I guess, involved and make an impact here. You're looking for folks to help in this mission, come alongside and fight to get this story out to people. In fact, you're leaving pretty soon, aren't you? To
Yeah. Yeah.
go do that?
Next month, November 9th, we'll be taking off on
Wow.
a ship on the Southern Ocean. And to give you an idea of what we're heading into, all the beds on the boat have straps.
Yeah.
So you don't see that on cruise ships, right? I've done tons of those because I used to be in that industry, but it, we're hoping, I don't want it to be so calm that we don't have good film footage, but I don't want it to be so rough for so long that we're just dry heaving, the whole way. But yeah, we're going over the world's most dangerous ocean to an island that's 1,000 miles from civilization. There's no rescue. We're crossing crevasses and glaciers. And so we've got to put our best foot forward and bring the best version of ourselves and try and mirror what Shackleton went through and juxtapose different, internal ideas with some of the physicality of the journey. But yeah, we're inviting people now to partner with us. I mean, Antarctica is not a cheap place to visit. And this particular type of voyage that is actually tracing his footsteps only happens every couple of years. So it's a very specific voyage that we are looking to fund. And so it's kind of like a Shackleton thing. A lot of times he would take off and he didn't have all of his funds raised and they came in afterwards or during. And so we believe that this film will reach hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people, because it's like you said, it's part of a reality series right now. So it's kind of like what Bear Grylls has done with Into the Wild. It's
Mm.
about the only parallel that I can think of. But even more so, he's gotten into his faith as of late, but most of his stuff was very it was the physicality, how do you stay positive in difficult situations and how do you handle risk? And those are all important things, but we want to take the physical aspect of it and highlight the spiritual. And because that to us is the real journey, that's the big journey, and everything else that we do is built on that. In fact, I would argue that a lot of the physical activity that we do is done because we can't do the internal work. We can't do the hard work. So if you can't internalize and process and heal the pain, then you pass it on other people, or you perform it through extreme measures, whether it's working out in a gym for 8 hours or and so we want to be mindful of that people are there's two different journeys going on. Yes, we're going on a physical, exciting, arduous journey filled with risk for sure, but we also want to take the viewer inside and look at when are the times that you feel most alone, and what do you do in those times, and is God enough, and does he even care, is he even here, those big questions. So yeah, we're looking for people to help us. We've raised about half of the funds to film it, and then we need to raise the other half, which is about 40,000 at this point, and that will actually allow us to create a trailer, and then raise the next level of funds to actually edit the film and get it on a ton of different platforms. But the key is to get the trailer, I think, to move the needle even forward. But to do that, we have to have a film, and we've got to pay for a film crew to be a part of this. And again, Antarctica is not cheap to go to, and this is almost a month of our time, so it's a pretty big commitment.
These are God-sized missions, and the way that he comes through, as you mentioned, sometimes in a way that's clear that only he can get the credit for it. And man, wouldn't that be something if that took place and you could help be a part of it? A great way to do this. What's the best way if folks do want to be a part of it? Obviously, we've got some great folks, some base camp alumni probably listening. By the way, your neighbor Doug says hi. He's also
Yeah.
on. It's funny how many people will pop out of nowhere. Doug's here today too, so he says hi.
Hey, Doug. I see Doug on my bike rides. Yeah, I bike by his house. That's fantastic.
Next time he said, "Come by and pick up a check." I don't know what Doug. I don't know what that means.
That'd be great. Doug's a good man.
This is a cool way for us to support something that I do believe God's moving, and of course, a way to be a part of it. And full disclosure, I've been a part of this with Grace Explorations and what you guys have been doing for, gosh, I don't even know now, years now.
Yeah.
And Kevin, what I've seen God do in the move in every different phase of it throughout the little base camp meetings, spreading throughout the country, and first to state of Michigan, but then even further as the documentary series. You've taken people to Israel, you've taken people to up on the to Mount Everest, and now you're taking us all to this historic voyage. I mean, it's going to be incredible. And yeah, I know people are going to want to be a part of it. What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so our website, it doesn't even have this stuff on it because it's kind of a side project that's in process. But graceexplorations.com is a great website to view what we have done thus far. That has episode 1 with the True Summit on it. But if they want to partner with us, probably the best way for them is just shoot me an email. And although there are giving links that are on the website, at graceexplorations.com, but Kevin at Grace Explorations, that's plural with an S, Kevin at graceexplorations.com. is probably the best way. And then I can send them some specific information, like our latest newsletters, with all kinds of explanations of how you can partner and itemized costs. Sometimes people are like, hey, I want to pay for that part of the journey. And so there's ways they can do that. And then just giving them the overarching, like, okay, where are we going with this? This is episode 2. What does episode 3 and 4 look like? What are your objectives? What do you hope to accomplish? Who are you trying to reach? So we can send them a newsletter link, and that'll explain all that stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I love what you're doing. I love that you're obedient to do it. I know this is like part of who you are, but dude, I mean, sometimes I don't want to leave the house to go down to the, you're going out into the middle of it, and I know that's kind of in your blood. That's the way you were made. I think he wired you that way, but to fulfill some big things. And man, I can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah. And I appreciate you, Justin. You're on our board of directors, and you've been an integral part. people are like, how did you launch something that, impacted all these men? I was like, well, we had a lot of favor and you were one of them. I mean, to be able to get on Wood Radio and then, of course, being able to be on Beck's show was, unbelievable. I mean, who knows how many people heard that story? And that was all done because of our relationship with you. And, we're very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, I am too. I will tell you. Oh, did we lose? I think we lost Kevin. He may have gotten a phone call. But we'll bring him back in here. Well, where he's going, there is no signal. So better get used to it.
Yeah. Am I back?
You are back. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time today, Kevin. And I will let folks know. In fact, there are people that have questions. We're going to let the VIPs in the Freedom Fam. If you're not a VIP Freedom Fam member, it's just $7 a month until the end of this month. You can ask questions. You get our secret show prep daily delivered right to your email. All kinds of great perks. My audiobook is in there to listen to for free. And if you sign up for a whole year, you get a month free. Plus, I'll send you my signed book, Good News, Hope, and Encouragement for Trying Times. So join in. It's a great way to help support what we're doing. But those folks, VIPs, get to ask Kevin some questions. So just a moment. If you're one of those folks, stand by. We'll be right back with you. If not, Kevin, thanks again. We appreciate you. We'll be praying for you while you're gone. And if folks want to keep up to date, maybe you can't contribute right now. That's fine. You want to maybe stay in touch and find out what they're doing. GraceExplorations.com is the website. Thanks again, and we appreciate you and just your obedience and all you do to continue walking through.
Thank you, Justin.